What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do a demo of the Nameless Suite from Fortin Amplification and Neural DSP. But first, we're going to take a quick look at the plugins I use, because when I did the Misha Mansour ToneForge plugin for Joey Sturgis Tones, I got a couple DMs asking me what other plugins I used and how I set up my track. So let's take a look at that. So for drums, I use Superior Drummer 2. This is the kit I use. I have the New York Avatar kit. I kind of tweaked it a little bit, added some cymbals, added a couple drums, and tuned it a bit. I do not send all my individual drums out to the DAW. I use the internal mixer, which is set up like this. So I have I got my kick in, kick out, kick sub, and then my snare mics, top and bottom, and a compressor on it. And then I run them to a bus for kick, snare, tom, cymbals, room mics, and then they get pushed out to a drum bus in the DAW. And that's how I set all that up. And then up on top here, I can set up all my EQs, filters, transients, all that stuff. So this is what the kit sounds like. Pretty good sounding kit. Works for doing demos and stuff like that. So that's about it with that. This is what it sounds like in the song. And then on the drum bus, I throw a little bit of EQ on it, and then I use a one of the bus glue compressors from Joey Sturgis Tones. And that's it. All right, let's move on to bass. All right, so for bass, I have two tracks. I'm using the Bass Forge Hellraiser plugin on this. I have the Brute Boy preset on one track and the Hefty Clank on the other track. And what I do is I just record one DI and then I copy and paste it to another track, and then I center them. And the Brute Boy gives a kind of like I took a low pass filter and pulled out most of the highs, so we get a good low muted bass tone, kind of like this. So that's how that sounds. And then on the other track, I did a high pass filter on it and took most of the bottom end out, and then pushed the clank knob pretty hard. And the distortion on this and the gain, as you can see, is pushed up pretty high. And that gives me this sound. And then when we combine them together in the bus, this is the tone we get. Pretty good bass tone. I like it. It sits well in the mix. It enhances the bottom end on the guitars, but doesn't get too muddy. And then the clank on it kind of punches through in the mix, which is nice. And it sits well with the kick drum also. So, all right, let's move on to guitars. All right, so here we are. These are the stars of this demo. I'm using 2 amp presets. I made one myself. I started with the default preset when you open it up, and I got to say this amp sim is probably the most realistic amp sim I've heard so far. I don't know how they did it, but they actually captured the air being pushed in front of the microphone coming out of the cabinet, which is, it's a hard thing to replicate digitally. They managed to do it. I don't know how they did it, but man, this thing is very realistic sounding. And the highs sound good too on it. They don't get all fizzy, which is really nice. So I started with the default setting, and then I tweaked it. I went to the high gain setting, and as you can see, the gains are pushed pretty hard. This is a pretty high gain amp tone. And I recorded a left track and a right track, and on the left I'm using my preset, which sounds like this. pretty aggressive sound. And then on the right track, I'm using one of the presets that came with the version 2 update. So if you bought the original program, Neural DSP sent you a version 2 update, which came with a bunch of presets in it. Some of them came from Ola, England. So I was like, oh, let me check those out. So he has one called No Complaints Now. And I use that on this track. And it's a lesser gain. You know, it's on the low gain setting. And this is what that sounds like. There's a little more clarity to it, which is nice. And then when you combine the two of them together, you get a really thick guitar tone. It's a really nice tone, very defined. All the chords are defined. You can hear every note ring out in them. When you chug, it's not too bassy or woofy. It doesn't cause the speakers to woof out on you. There is a solo in the song. If we head down here. Right here. And for that, I'm using the default setting when you open up the AmpSim program. I'm just using the plain default setting. I pulled back the gains a little bit on them. And then for delay, I'm using the Soar tape delay plugin from Joey Sturgis Tones, which is a really cool plugin. You can get some pretty warbly modulating delay sounds when you start messing with the age of the tape and the health and the flutter and everything. It's really cool delay plugin if you want to check it out. And then over here, I used the whammy pedal, but I was using the octave. I'm adding an octave below. So if we listen to these two tracks right here, and we take out the effects, then we got right here. So as you can hear the octave effect in there. With the AmpSim on, this is what that sounds like. Just sounds enormous. All right, and that's pretty much all I'm using on these. So let's get into the song. Please subscribe, hit the like button, share it with your friends. If you got any questions, or if you like this format of video or whatever, throw a comment down in the comment section, and we'll check it out. All right, later.